Welcome to the Coala Studio Podcast, where we deliver honest insights into e-commerce and entrepreneurship. No fluff, just real talk. I'm your host Ronak, and today I'm joined by Gurdeep and Jas from Sansar Solutions. We'll explore their journey into bookkeeping, how they're innovating with tech in the accounting space, and what sets them apart in the industry. Plus, we'll dive into their personal stories and future plans. Let's go. Hey Jas, Gurdeep, welcome to the show. You guys
Thank
are
you.
episode 2. And
Awesome.
We're excited to have you. Do you guys want to start off with telling us a little bit about yourself? We'd love to know the founding story. I know there's so much we can talk about here today. So let's jump right into it.
I think I'll let Gurdeep tell the founding story, as that's where it kind of starts.
You know, I went to school, I studied accounting, and I was just trying to work for an accounting firm back then. But I remember I just didn't get a position. And then, I worked in a job. My job was I was the internal bookkeeper manager, right? It's for an insurance company. The boss didn't know how to do bookkeeping, but I suppose that's my responsibility. I didn't know how to do it. And the software, I didn't know how to use the software either. So I worked for about 6 months like that. I think I quit that job. I did another role like that. Same thing, right? And then the bookkeeping is what everybody needed, but it seemed like it was hard, it was frustrating, people didn't know how to do it. And then so I got fired from that job. Same thing, it lasted like 6 months. Both roles lasted 6 months. And then
Keep it in mind that he has an accounting degree. So like he's thinking, hey, I went to school for this, but they never taught him how to do bookkeeping.
Right.
So then when he went into the space to get a job, those are the jobs that were naturally open to him.
But yeah, so then I guess I was unemployed. I was unemployed and I was just sitting there like, okay, how could I have done my job? I was on Google and I discovered the software called Mint.
Right, that was by Intuit at the time, right?
I think so, yeah. It connected to your bank account, but it was just for personal use. It would just help you with your budgeting. But then I kept searching and then I came across Xero. And then when I tried that, that's when I had the light bulb moment.
You finish your degree, you get fired from 2 jobs that are directly...
No, he didn't. First, he didn't get recruited. First, he didn't get recruited by the big
Hey,
firms.
I didn't want to point that
So
out.
nobody wanted to hire him there. Then he applied for some jobs. He worked there. Then he got fired.
Right.
And then 2014, he has that light bulb moment of Xero. So now Gulu take it over again.
Well, I had that light bulb moment, right? But then, I had no clients. I didn't know how to get clients. And so I just struggled for a long time, just, not making any money. But then I remember, I think one of my first clients I had was actually him. So at that time, he was running a fitness gym, Fit Nation.
Wow.
And I remember, I think they had an issue with their previous bookkeeper, and Gurdeep, I think he knows how to do this, let's call him. So they gave me a shot. And so I remember...
Did you guys know each other before, or is this...
Yeah, we actually went to high school together.
Oh, cool.
So we've known each other since 13, 14.
Right.
We obviously entered in high school grade 8 together, but we weren't friends till about grade 11-ish.
Sure.
Then we got into UBC together. That's when we got really close. After I graduated, I started my first business with 2 of my business partners. And then he finished his degree a little later than I did. And then after that kind of went into this space.
Nice.
So then we reconverged at the point of I'm running the business now with my 2 business partners. He's doing bookkeeping. He has the idea of Sansar. He starts doing our books. And then we would do mastermind meetings at that point of helping each other out, helping each other's businesses out. We had a friend call in, and he taught us marketing. And we would have these meetings, and Gurdeep was there, and we were there. And then one day Gurdeep just approached me and my 2 business partners at the time and said, you guys want half of the company, and you guys take care of sales and marketing, and I'll take care of the business, the actual accounting part.
Amazing.
So we're like, great. So we went in there, I think a year or 2 we tried, we would, get some accounts. We were advertising on Craigslist.
Craigslist, yeah.
Craigslist.
Yeah. It's really silly, but that, because I was really camera shy.
Yeah.
So it's really easy for me to go to Canva, just make a little, image ad, post it, and then just one little article, right?
And then you get a phone number, and then sometimes they want to meet in person, so we would do the meeting in person. I remember the Nando's guy wanted to meet in person, and all of us went. It was 3-4 of us, and basically sold this guy on bookkeeping. And then I turned around and I sold him on marketing consulting.
Wow.
Where I was getting paid, I think we were charging $100 an hour or something like that. And we were actually helping with that. We were in our early 20s at the time.
So very typical of small business owners, the way they start, you get into it, you're doing everything up until you have this eureka moment where you're like, okay, I can't be doing everything and anything in this business. I need to delegate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I think maybe I did too much of that. like I had this one guy, Cam, and he was really great. He was always asking, yo, feed me clients, I'm ready to rock, ready to rock. And I could never give him enough. But I trained him so well that it was just like, I think the eureka moment was, I don't want to pay him hourly, he should get a percentage.
Right.
Right? And I think I remember I was sitting at the bar, I think I did a microdose of LSD, right? And I was sitting there like, that's exactly what I had to do, right? And that was actually really great. It really did help accelerate the growth of Sansar. But now there's also problems with just doing only commission only.
Wow. There's psychedelics in the conversation now, so I'm guessing it's got to be interesting from this point on.
Yeah.
As good as it gets, right?
Yeah.
I remember 2021, so we weren't making that much money, like maybe like 50,000 revenues, right? But I was huffing and puffing, I was working all the time. So I guess our systems were bad then. We didn't have any automation, right? And I remember I took some gamble in the stock market and I made some money in there. So I'm like, screw this bookkeeping.
He was about to walk away. He was about to walk away from the freaking poker table. It says walk away with his chips. Is what he wanted to do.
We all at some point do this?
But then 6 months later, I just, everything I won, I fucking lost again. So then, but I had 6 months of a break.
Right. And at this point, you're still in your 20s? Or?
No, this would be just recently. So it's 2024 now. So this is like 3-4 years ago.
3-4 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I walked away. Like, I'm not doing this anymore, right? I'm just going to gamble in the stocks. That didn't last long either.
Lost the money, had to come back. And then he started fiddling with the Facebook ads, right?
When I came back, we're going to use the proper software.
Right.
But you're right, Facebook ads.
No, not only that, but it was Facebook ads. But before, he was specifically targeting BC and geographically going for that area because that's all, that he knew. But then one of the guys, he was
local.
Yeah, local, right?
So very hard. Imagine you're trying to fish in this tiny little pond.
And then the guy he was working with at the time, who was like, yo, you should make the ad for all of Canada, or they made it by mistake. By mistake, they turned on all of Canada. So then all the leads started coming in from all across Canada. And they're like, oh, well, we could just file Ontario and we can file this and we can. So they're like, okay, great. And then I think that probably took it to the next level because now the lead numbers started to go up. And then he found a sales guy who was a student at UBC at the time. And then he started handling the sales kind of thing. And then I think that's when the business was about to grow. And then that's when, we basically, the business partner that I was with, things weren't working out in terms of both factions, right? And so essentially what happened is I ended up getting bought up by him and my business partner got bought up by him. He took over full control of the company. I ended up coming back in, just helping with sales till we realized that I needed to be in operations. So I walked away, but we had an agreement. They said like, okay, if you ever want to come back in within X amount of years, if things go well, then we can go ahead and do it. Because the thing is in these shareholder disputes and things, when you're dealing with like friends and stuff like that, things can get kind of sour. So when we came out of that one thing, because I was exiting a different business, then forced to exit this business. And so I was emotionally in a spot where I didn't know if this is what I wanted to do or not. And I didn't want to say, give me X amount of your company and blah, 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 because I didn't know if I could actually offer value.
Right.
So when we started working together again, and then he's like, you know what, I think I want you to be CEO and run the company. Then slowly everything was just kept falling in place. Then we had me and him full time just kind of going in on it. And then our offshore team started to grow. We started hiring more people, right? We hired a digital marketing company that started helping us and revving up the ads and stuff. And then I moved to Gastown and I ended up running into a guy in my building who had a background in sales, really great sales guy. We hired him. And so everything just started to fall into place. And I would say the growth that we had in the last couple of years, it was a lot more than like the 8 years or the 7 years put together. So it was like you had to suffer for almost a decade, and then all the growth happens in like these smaller last couple of years. Yeah, exactly.
Dude, honestly, I don't know, and feel free to share your thoughts on this as well. I feel like at this point, I'm not around the right people to be doing psychedelics.
Yeah, you have to be in the right space.
Like, and not in the sense of like, oh, I don't feel safe or I don't feel, protected.
Yeah.
That's always been around. Like, I can have my wife sit next to me and like I can do whatever I want and I know I'm safe, protected, whatnot, right? Yeah. But like we're having this conversation here. If I don't ask you the right questions, I'm not gonna get the right response that I'm craving from this whole interaction, right?
Right.
The same way I feel like unless you're doing shrooms or any other psychedelics with the right people, you're not going to get the right outcome for it. It's just going to be like another night of drinking. Tell me one thing that you've come to a sudden realization about after.
Man, so one thing is I used to stutter a lot, right? And so after my first psilocybin experience, my stutter like solved.
Wow.
Right? But I remember being like an atheist. Like I was one of those like smart ass atheists. Didn't believe in. But that one psilocybin trip just made me a fucking believer. Like it feels like I saw or met the creator, if that makes sense.
Wow.
Yeah, man, that's the visionary right there.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Everybody knows that Silicon Valley runs on microdosing.
Yeah.
Like majority of the business owners in Silicon Valley are microdosing.
Absolutely.
And
it's
like,
getting
a lot of
popular
developers and coders are microdosing as well. I think that even the guy who synthesized it said that there's going to be a lot of potential when used in a microdose versus in a macrodose.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to see. I think the landscape, everything is changing. It's funny because these things that made these people introspective is what led to these technological advances. Like Steve Jobs says that one reason he felt that his LSD experience was one thing he could never really fully explain to his wife.
Yeah.
And it was one thing that she couldn't fully understand about him.
And I think it's also not for everybody. I mean, personalities differ.
Yeah.
Poisons differ.
Yeah.
You need to find what's right.
But I think bringing it up, and we're talking about it in a business context, right? In the 90s, 80s, things like that, you never saw that type of stuff happen.
Yeah.
But now, like, we're millennials, right? And the business commerce space is slowly going to start to be dominated by Gen X, millennial, and whoever comes after kind of thing. And I think with that, you're going to notice a lot of changes in the landscape. And that's just one piece of it. Along with that comes everything going online, people going on the cloud, people doing innovative things.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's a grand renaissance in a way.
I agree. That's a really good way to put it, actually. Yeah. How do you, as business owners with two very different personalities, and like I've noticed this, that you guys are quite different in terms of who you are individually.
Yeah.
One, how do you maintain that friendship, and two, how do you maintain that friendship whilst putting your views across about the business?
Yeah, basically I would say your relationship changes like over the years, right? So it's like we started off as friends, we're still friends, but that gave us a base. But then I think with our friendship, there was these moments of we're studying Bio 12 together. So like we took an extra course together. So it's although we had a friendship, we would like, hey, we're getting together, we're going to study at this time. So we were always engaged in having to do some type of work together that then formed the relationship around that. We played video games and sports, but the thing that tied us together was this academic pursuit. We both went to the same university, spent a lot of time in the library together and stuff. And so with that, we have this, or started to build this working relationship, friend relationship. So now it's like where we're at, I can understand him really well because of the friendship part. But in terms of the problem that most people face and that I faced in my previous businesses was like, your friends, it's very hard to give them that feedback that you need to give them as business partners. And so I think that can be challenging a lot of the times. However, with us, we have a clear outline of, hey man, this is our agreement and this is how it goes. And I think that, sometimes when you are in 50-50 relationships, it's never going to be 50-50. One guy's always going to try to be the one up, right? And if it's not clearly defined, you're going to butt heads. But when it's clearly defined, it's like, hey man, it's 55-45 or 60-40. Yeah, you get to run whatever, but at the end of the day, if I don't like the decision, I'm gonna veto it.
Yeah.
Say, okay, good. So that's that kind of thing, right?
Okay.
So you solve a lot of problems that way. If you can find yourself in a situation where you're not necessarily being egotistical to be right, but you're doing it because you think it's the best for the business, then that's kind of how it should be. But from what I've learned about Microsoft and a lot of these companies, they said that the founders would always be at each other's necks all the time.
Yeah.
Like some of the most heated arguments, and we've had that as well. But at the end of the day, the resolution happens really quick, and it's like, okay, oh no, I get that. I see what you're saying. And it's never personal.
I know some partnerships, it's like one is trying to win more than the other, and it's like this very like zero-sum cutthroat.
Right.
I think that's where the issues happen, right?
I think that's a very good point that you mentioned, in not just in partnerships, but in any discussion, any negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
the goal is to come out with a win-win situation. How do you guys break down the day-to-day tasks, the big tasks, the small tasks?
I would say like he's basically like chairman, founder almost, and then essentially what I do is I go in and I'm the CEO and I kind of run the whole show sort of thing. But like, you know, he's in on important meetings, important things. We work together. There's like when there's certain things I'm like, hey, you know what, this is a perfect thing for him to do. He'll go ahead and do it. Teaching some of the stuff, training, answering those kinds of questions and things like that.
I think that's a big point. I think now on our stage we're really focused on team building.
Right.
And back then we didn't have that many clients, so I had a lot of time to train, right? But now we don't have that same amount of time, but we need to train more people.
Correct.
And so I think that's going to be my role going forward, really training everyone, building a team.
A lot of our listeners are obviously, or it's my assumption, but a lot of them are going to be business owners who are getting into it or who are like, you know, a couple of years into it. Many of them have founded the companies on their own or have a partner. But for somebody looking to partner with someone on a venture, what are your top 3 recommendations if you were to summarize them based on this conversation?
Well, I think you got to go in first. I always tell people, you got to go in and see, like, is this person going to be a partner or is this someone that you need to be having on a salary?
Right.
Like, what's the proprietary blend that they bring to the table? And do they bring a skill set that you don't have? Then, do they bring a skill set that you don't have and that you can't hire? Right? So then you got to think of all those things, and then shareholder agreement of like, what exactly does this person do? What exactly do you do? How are the duties and roles and responsibilities, you know, done? And, you know, how should it be? Like some partners, what they do is if there's a component of working in the business, they'll have salaries attached to that. So it's like if I work 40 hours and you work 20 hours, your salary is different than my salary because those are hours, right? But at the end of the day, whatever the profit's left, that's our dividend. Okay. So it's like if we're 50-50, you take 50, I take 50, right? So like that kind of works. So that's those, you have to find something that works in that sense. Like what if one guy's working more than the other guy, but the other guy brings the proprietary blend in the brain. So then what's a fair arrangement?
So we're doing this, we're still in the process of doing this, but we're actually writing down every term in case anything happens. Like it's down to like something happens to him, what happened is his wife, what is she get? Is she gonna
is she gonna own the shares? Does he have to work with her? Yeah. Does she get bought out? When she gets bought out, what's the price gonna be?
So you're basically building a contract as you go.
Yeah.
Or it's like, you know, if 4 years I don't like Jas anymore, I want him out. What are my options? We have all that written out. I mean, it is awkward to talk about it, but I think it's really important.
That's beautiful.
You need the transparency there. Right. So what happens is you create your shareholder agreement, and it could be amended infinite amount of times as long as both parties agree.
Correct.
Right. And I wanted to I treat this as something that I want to have forever. Right. So then I want to know if I have a son or daughter, are they allowed to get involved? Can they take my position? Does he not want that? What if he has a kid and he's just totally nepotism ninja or something, and it's just a pain to deal with? Like I want to protect maybe I don't want to deal with it, so I want to put that in there, right?
What if you both have kids and they don't get along?
Yeah, exactly. If they don't get along and then they want to take over, like who knows, right? So you got to think about all these sorts of scenarios and clauses and things like that, and kind of put it in there. And that's where, yes, like you said, it can get uncomfortable. But if you're in a situation, you're noticing someone's getting really uncomfortable, then they're playing emotional games with you, or they're trying to sway and manipulate your opinions. You should do it like this. Then hey, maybe I'm not in the right situation, right? Because then that's where it comes down to, can you separate business from friendship?
Right.
Right? Because if you notice that people always say, business from friendship, but then you're sitting there with your business/friend or whatever, a business meeting kind of goes sour, and now, you're supposed to hang out after. Now you could tell he's off, his mood's off, doesn't want to hang out anymore. That's bullshit, right? Because it is going to bleed into it.
Exactly.
So you people that say that, oh no, we know how to separate, they're usually full of shit. The other thing is when you're with someone, say you guys are trying to start something, you have to see, is that person really like you? Like what if you're the all-out guy that's just never going to settle, and you want to keep building the thing and you're not complacent and you're going to go pedal to the metal, right? Like say if you were like an Elon, right? And you wanted to do that. Then you were paired with someone that, once he gets to making, an okay amount of money, checks out, works 3-4 days a week or whatever, and decides, I don't want to
go on more
vacations and stuff like that. That's your complacent entrepreneur, right? And they're out there. And if you're not one of them, when you're partnering, make sure you don't partner with one.
Correct.
Because if you partner with one, it's just going to be dead weight. That's basically holding you back from growing.
this is a mistake I actually made. My first business or my first entrepreneurship venture was like maybe 5-6 years ago. The first time, I think it was a consultancy as well.
Yeah.
And it was more on the tech side, so I tried to do it with a friend of mine. I'm extremely driven. I don't know what an exit strategy is in terms of my my entrepreneurial ventures. I want to keep going as long as I can, until I basically cannot anymore. Right? That was always the mindset, has been the mindset for 10 years, hasn't changed. And I think I partnered up with somebody who knew that they didn't want to get into business full time ever. Right? They always wanted to have and he's a tech employee, so the base salaries were way higher than what I was going to be making at a marketing job, for example, right? The way we set up the company was in the form of a general partnership, which is obviously not a corporation.
It's a sole proprietorship.
Sole proprietorship.
partnership.
That's like the worst thing.
Yeah.
They should never do
And
that.
right, can you, as experts in the subject matter, and I've learned this since then, it has costed me quite a bit, but can you explain why that's not a good thing to people interested?
It's a joint partnership,
Yeah.
so there's no limited liability.
Yep.
So you could get sued, both of you guys would get sued, both of you would be at stake there. And then at the end of the year, however much money is left,
All of it's going to get taxed.
all of it's going to get taxed. In a way, you're almost married to the person, right? Because if that person makes a poor decision and then they come after, it's going to come after both of you. And so then his decisions will impact your decisions.
Should you incorporate or should you start as a sole proprietor, right?
Right.
I guess that is a conversation then only if you're not going into a partnership with somebody. So let's say if it was just me trying to open up like a candle selling.
Yeah.
business.
How would you go about doing that?
Yeah, if I was just doing it on my own, wanting to test the waters, whatnot, makes sense to go sole proprietorship.
Yeah.
So that's
you got to consider a few
typically
things.
that's people start because it's $130, so it's quick and easy. Corporation is usually like $350. It's not that much more, right?
We also don't know if they have a
It's
proof of
kinda the same.
concept, right? We don't know if they have a proof of
You're
concept,
right.
proof of sales, proof of idea,
Right.
right? So some people will start like that, like sole proprietor, and then now they know, okay, I can make the sales, I can do this, I can do that. Now let's go ahead and switch over to corporation. But what people will need to understand is, I hear this a lot, oh, you should go corporate, you're going to pay less tax. Yes and no. It depends. How much money do you need to pull out of the thing? How much money does the business make? How much do you need, right? So say if the guy uses up $120,000 every time, and the business only makes $120,000. Is it advantageous for that guy to do it through a corporation versus sole prop? It's gonna be the exact same actually.
Yeah.
Because first he's gonna pay $120, he's gonna pay the corporate tax rate on that. He pays that liability. Now the money that he took out, he has a personal tax liability.
Right.
You add those two liabilities together, it's gonna be the same as if it was all just taken out at once. But this is where it's advantageous. The guy made 300, only needed 80.
Right. So
You made 300, you only needed 80, so now they leaves 220 in the
220
thing,
in the bank.
and it's left in the company, right?
Right.
Now he can use that because the government, this is what they've done. Yeah, we'll give you the corporate tax rate, we'll give you a break, but keep reinvesting those dollars in
Into
Canada
business.
into business,
Right.
so that we can grow the GDP, we can grow the business, economic, and commerce of Canada, right? So your company goes and buys another company, buys shares in a company, but that's all good and gravy. I have a holding company. My dividend comes out of Sansar into my holding company. I don't take it all out of the holding company. I try to take out the least amount as possible. Exactly what I need to live on, just to pay my bills.
But that whole company can buy other businesses.
And the goal is to put a whole bunch of money in there, get it to keep buying assets, and all the assets are protected in that company.
Right. So this is a very interesting conversation because we've just added the term holding company into it.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to break it down?
So holding company is not active. There's no one actually running it. It just owns shares.
Like a holding company doesn't have write-offs. A holding
Right.
company doesn't necessarily have a gas expense or anything. It's just holds assets.
dividends received
And dividends received.
dividends whatever the
That's it.
owner took
Right.
out.
That's it. That's all. And so that's what makes it, quote unquote, a holding company. Say if we bought a house as in the corporation, someone wanted to say personally sue him. Well, they're not going to get to touch the house that's in the
Right.
holding company. That's a separate entity
Entity.
from him. And then this is also where families, this is like generational wealth, where the holding company's worth so much, and slowly the children start to get involved.
Like if I didn't have a holding company, I would have taken money out of Sansar. I have to pay tax on that. Then I would have invested, right?
Correct.
Whereas because those dividends that get sent, they're tax free.
Right.
You have to
Sorry,
know
he just dropped a name there.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, Vesper. So it's just a lounge. Jas and I, we're just like minority, I guess. silent
LP,
partners.
so like limited partners, what they call it.
Sure.
So it's kind of like a silent partnership.
So it's a lounge.
Yeah, it's a lounge upstairs, which is like a bar nightclub upstairs, right?
So you guys are bookkeepers, accountants.
Yeah,
who
man.
Also own.
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lounge.
So the methodology here is not that we're accountants and that we love to party. It's that we're accountants and we like to identify distressed investments. So when things go really bad, there's distressed properties, there's distressed investments. If you see opportunity because you see that a certain group of management can turn the thing around, we see it as a huge investment opportunity.
Correct.
We essentially bought into an undervalued company because COVID hit and just demolished all of hospitality. So COVID hits, it's like the Great Depression, right? And I remember one of my investment advice from someone was, buy when there's blood in the street and everyone's scared and everyone's selling. That's when you buy,
Absolutely.
right? Is when things are hitting the pit, right? I think this guy could tell you a lot about that as well with one of his investments, Clover Health.
Wow.
He
Okay.
believes huge in this company and he was buying a whole bunch of stock in it and, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then if the stock just starts tanking, as it's tanking, he keeps buying more. Right? And so emotionally, hindsight, it's so easy to say like, oh wow, like that's crazy, right? But it's very hard to buy something that's tanking. But he had insight.
Like you spent 100K on it and now it's worth 40K.
40K
and you're buying
now you're buying more and more.
So
So he
maybe
bought
that is the right thing to do, but it's really hard to do.
It is, absolutely.
So he
It's
bought
almost counterintuitive.
Yeah.
What you're seeing versus what you believe is not aligning at the moment, and you just have to like have your faith.
I did want to add one thing about Vesper. So the way that was brought to our table was actually an interesting story. Maybe in 2015, our first years of Sansar, Jas actually went to our high school like grad transition. He basically
I was a volunteer. I was a community volunteer that was interviewing graduating students, and basically, I was graduating students, interviewing them, and transitioning them into the real world. And it was just something that I volunteered for. And I ended up getting the student that came by who's wanted to go into finance and accounting. And he was a young student. Hey, I see some potential in him. I gave his contact to Gurdeep. He started interning for us. And then he goes to UBC and he just absolutely destroys it. And in the time he was interning, he was very helpful, very, very smart. Goes to UBC and then ends
20
up...
times more capable than I was. And I already had an accounting degree. This guy was 17.
Wow.
And he knew more about accounting, finance than I did. He knew how to code, he could do everything. I was like,
He got a job on Wall Street at the age of 21, 22 or something at a cryptocurrency hedge fund and ends up making all these connections and everything. And this was one of those like, hey man, thank you for helping me out. Do you guys want in on this? So it was one of those things that you never know what's like. People say, oh, you have there's people intern for you or whatever. You take the time to help someone or mentor them. A lot of people will see it as a waste of time.
Right.
It's funny because when I went that day, my two business partners from my other business, they were questioning why I was even going. They're like, oh, you're wasting your time. What are you doing? And I ended up going anyways. And now looking back at it, that time that I spent, it might end up being more financially valuable than the entire time I had that business with
Businesses.
there was actually another realization too at that time. So when I was starting, I was really nervous of giving other people tasks. Like I didn't trust them.
Delegation.
They probably don't know how to do it, right? But when I met him, wow, there's people out there way better than me.
Absolutely.
I shouldn't even be doing
And
this.
I think this is a great point. I see this in a lot of entrepreneurs all the time, and it's one thing that I've promised myself I will not do is be afraid of hiring someone who's smarter than you. Like I'm not going to be doing that ever. I want to hire people who are smarter than me because that's the only way I'm growing as an entrepreneur.
To speak to that point, I think you raise a really good point here. So entrepreneurship is a well-rounded thing, right? But a lot of people, depending on how your startups are, you only end up exercising a certain level of it. So in my first business, yes, there was management duties and things like that, but it wasn't as intensive as what's required here.
Right.
There, it was more of a I end up working in the business. I manage some people, but there was a lot more of like doing things,
Right.
getting things done, doing things. And a lot of entrepreneurs are like that. It's more of like, I'm a do-it-all. Like I want to get everything done. But not many entrepreneurs will start to refine the skill of leadership and management.
Every time I meet you guys, and obviously I'm a Martech person as well, right? But every time I meet you guys, I learn something new. It's either about, and a lot of times it's about accounting and bookkeeping, but there's also a lot of times when I learn things about tech from you.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
So when I had that aha moment, and then I saw when I was working with him how he was always for, okay, that guy's good. All right, he wouldn't even really care about the money. So, okay, let's go ahead, hire him. Boom, let's do it.
Right.
It's a real quick decision making. Find the expert, let's hire him. Find the expert, let's hire him. Whereas some business owners will always be like, oh, you really want to pay that much? Oh, we should do it ourselves. Oh, they try to be the master of everything, right? And it doesn't really work out. And then on the management part, a lot of people don't have the right leadership skills. This stage in my life as an entrepreneur is so different than where I was before. It's like I'm in like an incubator for management and leadership, and then technological innovation. And being paired with him, he's like fearless, right? And very takes a lot of risk, right? So when I come up, there's never a stupid idea. Right. So if I say something like, oh, there should be this and that, and as dumb as it would sound, or as much of a pipe dream as it sounds, he would say, oh, I'm sure there's a freaking program we can find.
But I don't think in entrepreneurship there are any stupid ideas. There's just ideas that we can act on right away or figure out a way to act on. So we're a marketing agency. We also, I wouldn't say like we just try stuff out of the blue, right? We look at what competitors are doing. We look at what other people are doing, what could work, what the client's audience might like, and we come up with a strategy. We come up with say some content pieces or some campaigns that we think will work out, right? And then so you guys are our clients. We've tried so many different things for you, and if there's ever been a pushback from your side, it's always been about like, okay, the data doesn't say that this is working, let's change it up, right? But there are other entrepreneurs that we work with, and a lot of times it would just be like, hey, I don't like the color on this, or hey, I don't know if I want to do this, or hey, the competitors are doing this, let's just do this. Right? Which is kind of weird for me to take in as a marketer, because you don't really know if it's working or not. Maybe your audience will love it. At least try it out. Like we've done our research on this. We've come to a conclusion that this may work. Let's give it a shot. Let's A/B test this if you're not entirely comfortable with it.
There's just a funny story. So we're talking about growing as a management leader, right? So I lack some of these skills, right? Sometimes with the panic, I'll just start berating people, or I'll do it in the group chat. Like, not because I'm being nasty, just out of my habit. But basically,
just trying to cover up basically demeaning staff in front of other staff on caps lock in WhatsApp chats, and then getting kicked out of the WhatsApp chat.
The point of the story is, he sends me an email. He said, Gurdeep, we have to kick you out of the fucking group chat. I thought it's funny, right? So I posted it on Instagram. Right? And some people are like, oh my god, that's so unprofessional. Why would you post this, right? We had like 2 clients from there, and like 2 people wanted to work for us.
3 people messaged us after seeing that, being, hey, are you guys hiring? And then 1 or 2 people said, hey, I need to get my books done. And it was staged too, right? Because I didn't actually write that email. He's like, hey man, can you maybe just like write this email of how you're kicking me out of the WhatsApp chat and all that? And
that's
like,
actually really smart.
And I'm like, did get kicked. Like, I was being disruptive, and then we did decide that I'm not allowed to talk on it.
Yeah, that part was true, but the staged part was the email was staged, right? I wrote it. It was very, very professional, and I made it seem like it was like a HR office, sending in this email, and so he posted it, and people were just laughing, and then basically it's like the son, right? The son of the Indian family who takes over the business, has no business acumen, has no skills or anything, is very egotistical, ego-driven, materialistic, and lacks basic intellect. And he kind of portrayed that person so well that the amount of people that were commenting saying like someone would comment from Alberta being like, I ran into this guy at the bar last week. Another guy would say, oh yeah, for sure, the dude that I met is this guy. So he nailed the archetype so well, and everyone just had such a great laugh at it. We call it nepotism narinder. But I was actually reading about like Bollywood. Like in Bollywood, there's a lot of nepotism.
Yeah.
Right. Like the main actors are the sons and daughters of actors,
Sure, yeah.
and then the other actors don't really get much of a chance. And that
The real actors.
Yeah, the real actors, and that kind of happens in business too, right? Like
Right.
sometimes you'll see he inherits like this company, and he just a trucking company or something like that.
But that video was also to touch upon like, so in the early days, I wasn't doing that well. I wasn't making much money, but I had this concept. I was having fun, right? Then if I meet a lot of these people, they're always just trying to size you up, see how well you're doing, right? And so they would project, because if they know you're not doing that well, that's kind of that's that.
They'll project it, yeah.
Because there was always this thing. I don't know if you can or relate to this, but when you graduate out of university, and your classmates or people you went to high school with, there's always this period of 2 to 3 years where when people run into each other, it's always very much, oh, so what do you do?
What do you do?
Oh, so what do you do? Because they're trying to like one up and mash up and seeing what's going on. So when people talk to him, they're like, oh, you do bookkeeping? Do you even make money doing that? Like they'll make those types of comments.
In our community, I think even like my Daya, he's like, he introduced me to someone. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm a bookkeeper. He's like, don't say that. He's like, tell me you're an accountant. Like it's for some reason it's.
And I think I can relate to that actually, because every time I've met Gurdeep and asked you guys about what you do, it's never about like, hey, I'm an accountant. Hey, we're a bookkeeping business. And he actually takes a lot of pride in it, which I think is super important. Like right now what's happening or what I've observed, and I think you guys will agree there too. A lot of retailers who are in the simple business of retail sales, right? You're either doing e-commerce sales or you're doing in-person brick and mortar sales and B2B sales, but you're functioning, acting, and portraying yourself to be tech companies. You're hiring like tech companies. You're trying to build offices like tech companies, whatnot. And I feel like that's not coming from a position of where you want to go into tech really or create a tech product eventually, but it's almost like you're not too happy calling yourself a retail giant or a retailer.
So I was always remote, right? And my idea was I was just lazy. I didn't want to drive in traffic. But you're right. A lot of like people, my family, the others know you need an office. It's a very big thing. Right? Or KPMG, these big offices. But for me, it's like we call it asset light. So we were trying to grow our scale. Right. Also, when we started, like I just didn't have that money. I just had to like survive with and
I think that's the art of creating a business with that offers services as well, right? Like, why would you want to start liability heavy when your competitors can start the same business with no barrier to entry financially, right?
I think one of the reasons for our success is also just paralleled with like. Nowadays, it's easier for people to start businesses.
Right.
Like back in the day, I know like my father, he'd be like, oh, you need a lot of money, you need a lot of investors, business is so hard. But nowadays, you're right, you just need an internet connection and anybody can do it. And because so many people are doing it, I think that's why we're doing a little bit well too, because it's just, I don't know, it's just better than working a job, right? Like
you're right. There are very few barriers to entry in starting a service-based business. And a lot of people are doing it, right? The way it benefits companies like yours that are doing well in their particular field is people hire people who've just started out or whatever. They have a terrible experience in terms of the processes, the outcomes, the results, and they come out looking for better companies to do the exact same thing, and then they meet people like you. You walk them through your process, the innovation that you guys are striving for, whatnot. And then all of a sudden, you have a client that's come from a really poor experience, is now paying a little bit more and getting a very good experience. So it's almost like a benefit to a company like yours. And that's something that's happened in my business as well. A lot of people have, outsourced, offshored, they've hired local agencies and then worked with us. And the expectations are just so easy to meet because the bar is set really low by some of our competitors.
Yeah, but okay, now look at that. You're in digital marketing, right? So it's not necessarily compliance or mandatory, right?
Yeah.
But it eventually kind of is, right? Kind of a business
but not as.
But you look at accounting, it's a compliance thing.
Right.
Like my first business is kinesiology fitness, luxury. luxury business, okay? Trying to sell a luxury business, and like that is way harder than compliance, right? So when I got in this space, it was compliance. There's always there's a need for it, and you know, a lot of accountants were aging out. A lot of them are really bad at customer service. Most of them are just good at, like, they're really good technicians, and they lack the customer service human touch.
Right.
So with Sansar Solutions, we're creating a well-rounded sort of thing where the people that talk to you are actual humans that understand your problems, and they help bridge the gap with the technicians.